Hello, welcome to our new to us 2020 Corsa-E. I'm just about to try a long distance test, and I've tried to replicate the exact same circumstances as I did with our Leaf when it was new in early 2018. So it's December 2023 now. It's almost 6 years since I did that test, and I'm going to drive to exactly the same place. I'm just going to drive to the Red Cow roundabout in Dublin, just as you enter Dublin, and I'm going to see, I left at 6:08 that time, and I got there at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So I think with this 50 kilowatt hour Opel Corsa-E with 45,000 kilometers on it should be able to do it a good bit quicker. At this point the sat-nav suggests 374 km, but I know I'll clock up a few more going to service stations. The estimate of range is 288 km, but I think around 200 km is more realistic, driving for speed rather than economy. Now that I'm actually down in Castletownbere, which is downhill from where we live, we're down by the fishing boats at the minute, the estimate is 292 kilometers of range. When I did this trip in early 2018, I wanted to drive to Cork City and use single rapid charger near the airport, but it was actually out of order on that day, and that was actually pretty much my only choice near Cork at the time. There may have been one other option, but it was further off the route. On that trip I had to go via Macroom, and I've actually looked back at the video, and it's gas to see how I was doing that journey with so little experience. I am, after 6 years, I am so used to all those chargers, and I was actually looking for that Macroom charger. I didn't know where it was, just using the sat nav to find it in a car park. For about probably 3 or 4 of those years, it was the Macroom one was a critical piece of infrastructure, especially when that car got older and needed a top up on the way home. But anyway, less about the old car. I'll talk more about that at another time. I just want to give you a fair impression of this one. I actually shouldn't even need to charge in Cork City. I think I can get myself past Cork onto the motorway network and up as far as Fermoy is my hope, because Fermoy has a large number of chargers now. I can head there and run the car down quite low without worrying, because I know I'm going to get a charge. I'm amazed at how brave I was in the early days. I suppose naive, really. I was heading off, running the car right down to a single charger, where if it didn't work, I was going to be stranded in the middle of nowhere. In more recent years, I would have been much more cautious in the Leaf, always having enough reserve to get to one more charger, which became very restrictive with that car. I was much less interrupted as the years went on with, say, a charger not working, or having or a bit of a queue at one or whatever, but the planning in order to make that happen was getting kind of ridiculous, especially as the car at 125,000 it had probably lost about 10% of the original range. But actually we were probably making up for that in experience. But we were having to do journeys with the heater off at this stage, and going lower than the speed limit in places. You could keep 80k pretty much everywhere, but in the 100k places you're actually having to look for places to pull over and let people off. So look, I kind of see that as the early adapter phase, and for 3 years of that, the 2018, 19 and 20, the public charging was free. The car was fantastic. It would do somebody with a 60 mile or 60 kilometer work commute and back, if there wasn't a charger at work, if there was a charger at somebody's work, they could go about 100k really comfortably, heaters on, everything. It would do somebody's daily commute fantastically, or school runarounds, etc. But you know me, like I drove that car to Amsterdam with and into Germany, and from Sarah's, my wife's parents in Germany, back to Cherbourg. I think that's an 800-kilometer trip. That took 11 charges. I pushed that car in 2018. I went to this Deja Vu event in Belfast, and we did that via Sligo. I drove it everywhere. So I road tripped that car, but it was getting harder in more recent time, especially on a tight scheduled trip. So we've traded it in for this second-hand Corsa-E, and I think this car really brings the small car EV option much more mainstream. So there is much less planning required. You can just head off and blast away 120 kilometers and then start looking at the gauges. And I suppose I do have huge experience of where all the chargers are, but there are so many more chargers now than there were in 2018. You really can, with a car like this in particular, you can plan your journeys to go to places where there's multiple chargers, and you're less likely to encounter queuing or a disruption to your route because of a broken charger. So let's see if that really is the case. I didn't preheat the car. I didn't want to give it any much extra advantage over the Leaf in 2018. So I've just hopped in and headed off. I'm using the heater. I would have that off in the Leaf if I was doing this leg of the journey. The Leaf would still do the 130 kilometers to Cork, but I wouldn't have been able to use the heater, and you can't really ask people to drive that way. But that was using that car beyond what it's really suitable for, and there are ways. One of those could be picked up. They're a bargain, sub 10,000 euro now, and they could save somebody an awful lot of money in specific user cases. But I do think that this car, this could be somebody's only car. It would work. The Leaf works well, complemented by some of the classic or vintage cars that I have. For this journey today, I don't want to compromise on speed. I'm literally going to set the limiter to the signposted speeds and keep as close to that as is obviously reasonable for safety, and in most cases, you know, the speed limits feel just a little below that threshold, so it'll be fine to do that, and that's a fair test because the speed limit is something that we could all keep within. So when I get to the 100k bits, I'm going to do 100, and when I get to the 120 on the motorways, I'm going to put it on cruise control, and we'll do that. Another comparison that's going to be really interesting with this car is I had that partner van earlier in the year, which actually shares a lot of the mechanicals and actually the battery of this car. They're related, but that was obviously a much taller vehicle, much more affected by the wind resistance. I believe there's too much of a swing towards large vehicles on the road. I love the size of this. This is much closer to the Astras and Cadets that I'm obviously an enthusiast for, as you know, by the ones that I've restored. This car has an extremely similar footprint. I would actually say that the Corsa is more of a continuation of the old Astras than a Corsa. You know, it's actually grown in size. This car is almost identical in length to an Astra F estate I have, and the estates weren't that much longer than the saloons or hatchbacks anyway. But this car feels very like an Astra, certainly an Astra F. So we're talking mid-90s there, and that makes me very happy. This car is obviously heavier, but they have tuned the suspension to compensate for that. I'm just coming to the end of the rural 80k section of my journey. There's a few little bits of 100k in there. I'm literally just pulling out now onto the Killarney to Cork main road, which is got 100 kilometers an hour limit, so I will set my limiter to that. I have 150 kilometers of range estimate left. I've done 99 km, so that's in approximate terms. Let's just say then it would seem like 250 kilometers of that kind of country driving at not touring. I would say, you know, it is A to B driving. I was driving as quick as allowed. That around 250 kilometers, you know, on a wet morning. It's not really raining, just misting, but the wipers are on. It's 10 degrees centigrade outside, so not the conditions you'd pick to go get the maximum range, but probably very moderate, medium kind of conditions for this time of year. I'm passing the exit for the airport roundabout in Cork, and that would be my benchmark for journeys here. It's 8 o'clock, it's 3 minutes to 8, and so I've done 126 kilometers in an hour and 57 minutes, just under, sorry, in an hour and 47 minutes, and that's very close to an average journey. The speed limits have gone up and down over the years. An hour and 45 was always a good benchmark for coming from where we live to Cork City. I just wanted to give you another reason for why I would skip past what is probably an available charger, and you know, the car needing a bit of charge. Unlike the Leaf, which was quite a regular charge curve and then drop off, and also I was doing all sorts of funny things to actually slow that down to stop battery heating, which you don't have to worry about in this car. It has a cooling system. It actually takes some of the heat from the battery to heat the interior really efficiently. But with this car, its fastest part of the charge curve is actually lower down, somewhere just after about 20%, and actually up to around 50 or so is the very fastest bit, where it can actually do charge at 100 kilowatts. But so if I was to stop there, if I was to just be maybe charging in the second half of the battery capacity, we wouldn't be going we wouldn't be doing this journey in the fastest possible way. As I exited the Jack Lynch tunnel, I still had about 100 kilometers of range estimate and 30 kilometers to go. I'm just approaching my exit on the north side of Fermoy. 50 kilometers of estimated range left, which, if there weren't so many chargers here, I wouldn't be too comfortable about, but I do think this is very conservative. I still got an entire segment on the battery and then the red available. But anyway, I've also decided now what I'm going to do, I mean, this is going very well, is going to go to a little less convenient charger, but just so that I can keep all the charging statistics on the one app, so we can get a very close idea what the charging time was. So there is actually a pair of chargers just over there at a service station, but I'm just going to go a little bit back down towards Fermoy, where there's a choice of 3 on the ESB eCars network, and we'll keep all the stats together today. So the time is 8:20 was when I diverged from my route a little bit, but it's really not that far. Just goes against your instinct, doubling back a tiny bit. It's 217 kilometers, I think I just saw on the sign for Dublin. I actually just have the sat-nav set to this charger distance for the moment, so it's about 270. I think a single charge journey to Dublin is possibly on the cards, but I'm not going to kind of get involved in any nonsense and keep it nice and simple today. So we'll do one charge here up to 80%, and then we'll do another one later on. I'm not stopping in Dublin. I've got to go on from there, so I don't want to end up there with very short range left. So we will take another charge on the way, and of course we're not going to 100%, so we don't have our maximum range after these charges. It would be inefficient to charge that long to get the last little bit in. So that's just not the way you do it with an EV. So I can see all 3 chargers are available this time of the morning, and I will just about have time, I'd say, for a coffee here. Have to remember that it's on the back. This car is very conventional. Okay. I had arrived at the charger at 8:24. Having completed 168 kilometers with 52 km in reserve as I waited for the high power charger to ramp up. Back in my spring 2018 Leaf journey, I had taken my first charge at approximately 100 kilometers. I had about 35 kilometers of range left at that stage. That charge took about 30 minutes, and there was a similar length diversion to that charger from my route as what I'm doing here now in Fermoy. The Corsa can charge at up to 100 kilowatts, but the highest I saw here was around 64, enough to get me to 80% in a similar half hour. Okay, I've completed my charge at 8:55. That charger never really stepped up to the level it should have, which is a little disappointing, because it was more than 25-minute charge, and I'm actually not used to that, because in the Leaf I charged more frequently but shorter, and rarely spent more than 15 minutes on a charger, which you'd find you'd do one thing. You might take a rest break at one garage, get the bite to eat at another, and have a hot drink at the next. But anyway, I did get a hot drink at this one, and I'm going to note the time when I return to the route. But yeah, okay. I was on my Leaf journey, I was one full charge in at Macroom, and at the next town passing Care, I would have taken a charge there. So pretty soon I'll be passing where I would have done 2 charges all right in the Leaf, and the way I was doing it at the very beginning was not this short charging, so those were 2 quite long charges. I disconnected here at 79-80% because I'd seen that the speed of the charge had just dropped off down to 22 kilowatts. At that point in the Leaf, it would still be doing about 40, I think, or 50 kilowatt charging. I have a suspicion it was more to do with that charger than to do with this car. But either way, we're still the speed I've been able to go on the motorway and the highways was much higher than I could have in the Leaf. From here is where, well, actually from Cahir, the next town, is where I did start trying going at 120 kilometers an hour, and I encountered the battery building up quite a bit of temperature, and that was very close to the limit of what the Leaf can do. This car, you don't even see the battery gauge. It's just not a concern because it looks after that itself. It has a cooling system. The first two generations of, or three depending on how you look at it with the Leaf, didn't have this type of cooling. So I'm going to resume 120k. I'll put up do it on cruise control there. So we'll stick to that, and I'm going to reset the trip meter. I'll keep the overall trip, but I will do one specifically now for this bit of motorway, and that is, let's see, what, trip 1, trip 2, yeah, that's it. So I'll zero that. So let's get an idea of what km we get per kilowatt hour at 120 kilometers an hour. I've 210 kilometers of indicated range from here. It is actually 204 kilometers to the Red Cow, but as I said, I am going to take another charge, and maybe another time we'll go for the record of see what we do with see if we can do it on a single charge. But I don't, that's just for the record. I think the realistic way, without having to do any planning or thinking, I don't know what my next charge is going to be. I am going to see where we are when we get to maybe 80 kilometers of range left, and take something close to that. There is plenty of chargers between here and Dublin. I've just passed the junction where I rejoined the motorway after that charge back in 2018, so it would have been my second charge with the Nissan Leaf. It's 9:20. It was 10:25 a.m. when I reached that point in the Leaf. Back in the Corsa, I was finding its efficiency at 120 kilometers an hour impressive. The efficiency, because it's an estimate, I started the trip again, it started from zero, so it's at 4.7 km per kilowatt hour now on the motorway, maintaining 120 kilometers an hour, which is, and it's been improving. So I think after another bit, I've done 42 kilometers of motorway. I think the average is improving as I go along. So yeah, now I definitely don't have the range to go to Dublin, but I will see how this continues, and then make my choices. You know, what's ahead of me now is just from memory. There's it looks definitely get as far as Portlaoise, which is where I did a charge in the Leaf, the third charge. So that could be somewhere we could go to compare the time, maybe. Or after that, there's the Monasterevin, where there's many chargers. I think that one might be the best for the trip. So the others like Naas and stuff, they're a little bit hard to get to off the route, but both Portlaoise and Monasterevin are very easy to get to, and there's 2 or 3 in Portlaoise, or I think there's 5 or more in Monasterevin. So I'll update you when I get that far. I'm just coming up to the toll booth now, because I didn't take that little shortcut that I often take to avoid the toll, because this is actually quite a bit of a long route around on the motorway, and it suits EVs to get down to the lower speed and stuff, but I wanted to really push the motorway test. So it does about 4.8 km per kilowatt hour on the motorway at 120 kilometers an hour. And I'm doing this before I get to the bridge, the tolls, because I don't want to lose this data. I've had an average speed of 117 kilometers an hour, so I think that's a pretty accurate test of the motorway. I've done 115 km and I've 34 kilometers of range left, and the charger is in approximately 13 km. Again, I wouldn't leave these margins going to a single charger, but there's multiple chargers here. I know that if I slow down, if there was a problem, I could cruise on to another charger. So I'm not worried about the range. I'm happy to go quite low in this. I think it's got quite a big reserve. So I'm still outside of the red area with 32 km in the estimate left. Well, I just got my first battery warning, 22 km left, but I'm just at the junction now, the turn off. It's just coming up to 10:05, so I'm about an hour and 25 minutes ahead of the Leaf journey in 2018, and there's no restriction on the speed yet from the car or anything like that. I think it's a conservative warning. I have just entered the red, I must say. I think, I've done 127 kilometers on the motorway and 20 left. So I think realistically there's about 150k of range in a leg. You know, that's not starting at 100%, that's starting in the middle of your journey. If you live beside the motorway, you could do a bit more. 4.8 km per kilowatt hour is the battery consumption that I've been doing. So the charger in 2018 was just at another garage over the other side of this roundabout, and there's 3 new ones just here. Keeping the method very, very simple on this journey. I probably personally would have done this a little different. I would have done the cross-country thing, would have suited the car, would have probably probably done things just as quickly. That's another battery warning, and we're turning into the service station now. And you should have if you want to do a real test, there should be a heart monitor on this to see, am I really not stressed about the range? But I'm not. This will work, and if not, there's others I could go to. I'm carrying quite a bit of a load. You can hear things rattling about there. I'm afraid that'll remain a mystery to you, but I haven't set the car up super light. It's probably the equivalent of 2 adults on board in addition to myself. Both chargers are free. Now, the high power point here is restricted to 50 kilowatts. So there's one of the older ones just beside it, and I'm going to use that. I will do some other trips where I try to find a faster charge than I have been getting. That eluded me on the van as well, which should have been able to do that. So I'd arrived in Portlaoise in the Corsa at 10:07 after doing 301 km. The last leg had been about 128 kilometers and used about 70% of the battery. In the Leaf, I'd been averaging about 80 kilometers an hour to keep the temperature down, and arrived at 11:27. The Leaf was about an hour and 20 minutes behind at this stage, but was going to catch up a little bit in the absence of a high power charge for the Corsa.
They were both charging at approximately the same speed. I completed the charge in the Leaf at 12:02, but as you can see, the battery temperature was just at the edge of the red. I'd have to take it easy on the remainder of the motorway to prevent it gaining another bar.
I'm just pulling off the charger here now. I got to 80%. Looks like I was getting a faster charge on the older machine than someone in an identical, effectively, car on the high power one. So it is 10:49. I have 228k of range estimate. I went to 81% there, and what else can I tell you? I rushed off the charge there because to let those people get onto it. So I have 80 kilometers left to the position that I measured that journey in 2018 with the Leaf from Castletownbere to Dublin and the Red Cow roundabout. The estimate here is 46 minutes to get there. So there's one little extra road off this roundabout. It nearly catches you out into actually where the old charge point was. Anyway, here we go. We'll resume motorway speed for another while, but we won't be doing such a comparison on this because it will change to 100k as I get closer to the city. But I'll keep up the pace of setting the cruise control to the speed limit unless we encounter heavier traffic. So that's that, and then up to, off we go, back on the rails. So at 45 minutes,
the Corsa was on schedule to cover the 380 kilometres in an hour and a half less than the Leaf.
So that's progress, and I think that feels like a worthwhile investment. We traded in our Leaf against this, and you can debate what the price we got with the dealer. The simplest way of putting it is we paid 11 on top of our car for this, and I think that's not bad. 11,000 more 6 years later after having the other car for 125,000 kilometers, and now we have a car that really I think is twice as usable. I made it to the Red Cow roundabout at 11:32 with just under 380 kilometers done. Very, very happy with what this car can do, and looking forward to trying it out on a much longer trip, say a road trip in Europe. I think it could do the journey to my wife's parents, 800k from Cherbourg. I think I could do it with 6 stops instead of 11, which it was in the Leaf. There's really not that much of a compromise driving this car as against the diesel. The costs there were 36 euros. The first charge to full was obviously done at home on a solar charge, so we were carrying that with us for a head start, and it'll arrive home quite empty, so it'll be about the same on the way back.
The Corsa needed about 25 minutes less charging, but the biggest saving came from being able to drive to the speed limits between charges unrestricted by battery temperature rises. There is capacity to save even more time if we can find faster charges in the future.
So there you go. I'll do as many videos as I can with this thing, but it is difficult to I kind of tend to recover on journeys like this, but I can be quite tired, and you need to be fresh to do these. So yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you find it interesting. These can be picked up, I've seen them between 15 and 20,000 euros. It's a lot of money. It's up to you whether you can make that work for you or not. We had the head start of the Leaf to trade in, which we got at a great discount new, and we were happy to take the step back to one of these with 45,000 kilometers on it. This is a really, really capable car.